honest. Have you ever, spent way too much time thinking about your perfect partner? The one, the soulmate, the lobster, whatever you want to call it. We all crave that connection, don't we?
It's this universal human thing.
Totally. And this deep dive, we're ditching those tired dating app cliches and diving deep into the why. Like, why do we choose the partners we do?
The science.
The psychology.
It's fascinating.
And we've got just the guide for this journey, PAREJAS, by Dr. José Antonio Cisneros Yanez.
Now, what makes this book so intriguing is that Dr. Cisneros Yanez, he's a medical doctor, so he brings this really different perspective to relationships.
Oh, interesting. So we're talking less about those romantic ideals and more about, hard science?
Exactly. He's saying a lot of what we talk up to love is actually rooted in our primal instincts. Survival, reproduction, those instincts honed over thousands of years, still driving us.
Whoa, so that feeling of searching for the one, you were saying, is less about destiny and more like our cave-dwelling ancestors whispering to us.
Totally. And get this, Dr. Cisneros Yanez, he argues that humans were hardwired for pleasure. Think about it.
Yeah.
Art, music, that amazing dessert you devoured the other day, it all comes back to your brain getting flooded with those feel-good chemicals.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
And finding a mate, same reward system.
Interesting. So it's like this primal urge, but come on, it can't be all instinct, right? What about the whole idea of love as a social construct?
Yeah.
I mean, society has to play a role in all of this too.
It absolutely does, and that's where things get really fascinating. Dr. Cisneros Yanez says that throughout history, societies have come up with all sorts of ways to, well, shall we say, manage our primal urges when it comes to choosing a mate.
Manage.
Well, think about it. Monogamy versus polygamy, arranged marriages, even just the rules of dating.
Oh, yeah.
They all reflect this push and pull between our biological drives and what society says is okay.
It's like this constant tension.
Exactly, this constant tension. And here's where Dr. Cisneros Yanez throws a real curveball. He says it's not just our genes dictating our relationship moves, it's our upbringing too.
Okay, interesting. How so?
Well, he uses this fascinating example of adopted children. He says they often end up having really similar relationship patterns to their biological parents.
Really?
Even if they were raised in totally different environments.
Wow, that's wild. Like some kind of invisible blueprint passed down through generations. Hold on. If our genes are calling some of the shots and then our childhood throws in another layer of, programming, how much free will do we actually have in choosing a partner? What about all those cultural influences?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
And Dr. Cisneros Yanez says culture plays a huge role. He reminds us that for most of human history, love wasn't even the main driver in picking a partner.
It wasn't.
Nope. It was all about practical stuff.
Like what?
Social class, finding someone with similar religious beliefs, economic stability.
It's like we've traded one set of rules for another.
Right.
Out with the old social order, in with the age of algorithms. Because let's face it, online dating, it's changed everything.
It really has. And Dr. Cisneros Yanez, he dives headfirst into this whole digital dating revolution. He talks about how, on the one hand, we've got this global pool of potential partners now.
Which is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
Totally. But it's also totally overwhelming. And he even gets into the nitty-gritty of all the different platforms, from those casual dating apps to, the more serious relationship-focused sites.
So many options. Okay, let's break this down for our listeners who are probably knee-deep in swiping right now.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest changes Dr. Cisneros Yanez is talking about when it comes to dating in the digital age?
One of the most fascinating things he points out is how online dating has totally flipped the script on how we connect. Think about it. In the past, it was all about observation first. You'd notice someone maybe from across the room, size them up a little.
Get a feel for them.
Exactly. And then if you were feeling brave, you might strike up a conversation.
It was all about that slow burn. Stolen glances across a crowded room.
But now, it's like, bam. We're bombarded with information, profiles, pictures, those witty little bios.
It's almost too much.
It can be, and that's where things get tricky, because we end up sharing a lot of personal stuff really quickly, maybe building up unrealistic expectations, and sometimes even putting ourselves at risk.
And then there's the whole paradox of choice thing, right?
Huge.
Like, we have more freedom and more options than ever before.
But it comes with a whole new set of challenges.
Because how are you supposed to commit when you're constantly wondering if there's someone better just to swipe away?
It's tough.
So we've got these primal instincts, family patterns, societal pressures, and now the wild west of online dating to deal with. It's a lot.
Hmm.
So with all this talk about how technology has, like, totally changed dating, you'd think those primal instincts wouldn't stand a chance.
Right, like we've outsmarted evolution.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Dr. Cisneros Yanez argues that even with all the fancy algorithms and dating apps, we're still hardwired to seek out the same qualities that screamed healthy and fertile to our ancestors.
It's true. It's like we've got this ancient software running in the background, scanning for those same biological cues.
And those cues are showing up in, what, our taste in music? Our favorite foods?
Well, no, not exactly. Think more along the lines of certain physical features, for example.
Ah, okay, so maybe that whole opposites attract thing is a total myth.
It could be. Dr. Cisneros Yanez says we're actually more likely to end up with someone who's in a similar attractiveness range as us.
Interesting. Attractiveness, though, that's so subjective.
It really is. And it's not always about, conventional beauty standards either. It's more like this combination of factors. Physical, intellectual, even socioeconomic. It's like our brains are trying to find a good match.
On all those levels.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, though, if we're really being honest with ourselves, how much of this love thing is actually just, like, our primal instincts doing some subconscious calculation?
It's probably a mix, wouldn't you say? I mean, we're obviously wired for connection, but building a lasting relationship, a real partnership, it takes more than just a right swipe and some fleeting spark. And Dr. Cisneros Yanez really emphasizes this other aspect of relationships, which he calls negotiation.
Negotiation. What does that even mean in the context of a relationship?
It's that constant ongoing process of figuring things out together as a couple, establishing shared values, figuring out goals, creating a vision for the future, all of that.
So it's less about finding the perfect person and more about building a life with someone.
Exactly. Like you're choosing a teammate, a partner in crime, a co-architect for this life you're building together.
I like that, co-architects.
Yeah.
So what's Dr. Cisneros Yanez's advice on how to actually navigate that process? Building a life together, I mean.
Honesty. He really emphasizes being radically honest right from the start, especially when it comes to those potentially tricky topics. Finances, expectations around family, career aspirations, those big life things we sometimes avoid talking about.
It's like getting those awkward conversations out of the way early on.
Exactly. And he even goes so far as to suggest considering a prenuptial agreement.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, if it's needed, to make sure both partners feel protected financially.
Okay, interesting. Practical advice for sure.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Even with the best intentions and open communication, relationships, they're never smooth sailing all the time.
Yeah.
So what happens when those inevitable bumps in the road pop up?
Well, that's where Dr. Cisneros Yanez's concept of, and this is a mouthful, stabilizing and destabilizing forces comes into play. He says the longevity of any relationship really boils down to maintaining a balance between those two opposing forces.
Okay, break it down for me. What are these forces?
Well, you've got your stabilizing forces, which are all the good things. Love, shared dreams, intimacy, those things that bond a couple together. And then you've got your destabilizing forces. These are those external pressures, internal changes, anything that might pull a couple apart.
So it's like this constant dance between connection and tension.
Perfectly said. A constant dance.
So what are some of the most common destabilizing forces that throw us off balance? The ones we should be looking out for.
He mentioned economic shifts within a relationship as a big one. Like, say, if one partner suddenly becomes way more successful than the other, it can really disrupt the power dynamic that was there initially.
Right, which can lead to tension, maybe resentment.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that even if you start off on equal footing, life happens. And sometimes those life changes, they can shake things up in ways you never expected.
And it's not just about what's happening within the relationship either, right?
Yeah.
What about external factors? Societal pressures, family dynamics, even just the influence of friends?
Oh, those are huge. And Dr. Cisneros Yanez doesn't shy away from those. He gives an example of a couple where, say, one person goes through a major spiritual or religious transformation, but the other partner doesn't. Over time, that difference in values and worldviews, it can create some major conflict.
It's like relationships exist inside these constantly changing ecosystems. And sometimes those changes, they just take us on different paths.
That's a really beautiful way to put it.
Wow, this deep dive into Dr. Cisneros Yanez's book has been, I don't know, it's really got me thinking. It just goes to show you how incredibly complex human relationships really are. This fascinating mix of biology, psychology, societal norms, and just plain old chance.
It really is amazing. And for me, I think the biggest takeaway is this idea that we're not just searching for any partner. We're searching for a specific type of partner, someone who fits into the unique habitat we've created for ourselves. Our values, our social circles, our hopes, dreams, anxieties, everything, it all gets factored in.
Like we're all carrying around this invisible landscape.
That shapes who we are and who we're drawn to.
So, listeners, as you navigate this ever-evolving world of relationships, here's something to chew on. Ask yourself, am I truly open to growing and evolving alongside my partner? Or am I holding on to some fixed idea of who I am and who I need them to be? Because maybe, just maybe, embracing the unknown, the unexpected twists and turns, is all part of this wild, messy, beautiful dance we call love.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer, just the journey. Until next time, keep those deep dives going.